So basically, when you're changing your defaults, I usually do it through the options menu, which is up the top here. And we'll just go through some basic ones that that we can change. So basically, these are really, there's nothing here that I really touch. Under the edit, I usually turn the auto center new power clip contents off. So because when we go through and do a vignette, when we do an oval crop of somebody, the problem is that by default it always wants to put the photograph in the middle of the power clip, and the problem is that if we pick the right hand side of the photograph and we power clip, we don't want the photograph moving automatically. So by turning that off, that will disable that function to happen.
Where was that again?
That's under Workspace Edit. Right, so in the middle there it says auto center new power clip contents.
Okay.
So the other one that you could change, if you notice here, it says double click to edit bitmaps in photo paint. If you're sort of doing a lot of your editing, you're bringing your logo into Corel, your photo into Corel, and you want to edit in photo paint, then that sort of saves having to right click, go edit bitmap. You can just double click on the bitmap and it would automatically open up photo paint. So, I mean, it's just it depends on what if you're more comfortable working in photo paint than you are in CorelDraw. And there's certain things you can only do in photo paint that you can't even do in CorelDraw. So, again, I'll leave the snapped objects and everything on. If we get chance, we'll go through that a little later on. The dynamic guidelines, you can turn them on or off by default. Again, I don't use them enough to have them come on all the time or stay off. I don't know. Sometimes people like them on. There's times where I like them on. There's times I don't like them on. So I don't really save it as a default. The other thing, under save, I usually turn the auto backup off.
Oh yeah.
So, and I also turn to make backup on save too. So. Under text, now the big question is that this is really a personal preference. I usually like to have the default text units in inches, but some people like points, some people like pixels, whatever. I mean, probably if you're working with a laser machine, you're probably working in either inches or points, or usually most people what they're going to be working in. But I usually just work in the inches. It's easier for me. You all right?
No?
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
That's no problem. The other thing that some people want to change is the spelling and the quick correct. So if you don't want to perform automatic spell checking, you can turn it off here, and again, your quick correct. There's capitalized first letters of sentences. We want to turn that off. But again, there's some things that you can come in here and turn things off. I usually get somebody's always, correct two initial consecutive capitals. You may want to turn that off because, because we're engraving oddball, stupid things all the time as far as it's not sort of standard convention, you may want to turn that off. So again, you would do it right here. So, great. All right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Under the command bar, if you want, you do have the ability under the command bars if you want to change the shortcut keys for anything in Corel. So, for example, if I'm going, let's just find something here.
Published a PDF. Do you have that one?
Yeah, I should have that. We can always look for
I
it.
use that all the time.
There it is. So that one there right now doesn't have a shortcut key, right? Because if I select it, it doesn't show up under, I'm under short, usually it comes up generally, go to shortcut keys right here. So again, if you want to have a shortcut key for that publish to PDF, then you can have, you just select in here and then you just type whatever you want, right? So, you know, if you want F, you can do that, and right now F is not assigned to anything. If you type P, you could go P, that's center of the page right now, so that's being used by center of the page. So, you know, you could assign that if you want, but then you lose the P for center of the page. So you might want Control P, or maybe if you use it enough, you might assign it and just say, well, I don't care, I want to undo that one. So again, you can actually assign a separate hotkey to any command that's in Corel, and you have all the ability here, like here's file, here's the layout, text, you know, and don't forget under text we're going to have artistic text versus paragraph text. But again, you know, bold doesn't have any shortcut key, but again, you know, you could assign certain shortcut keys to those you know, those commands. And you've got your edit, so you've got your, you know, your undo is Alt backspace or Control Z. Redo is going to be Control Shift Z. So again, you know, you can see that, you know, Control X is cut, Shift delete, paste, Control V, Shift insert. So again, you know, there's certain shortcut keys that are already assigned, and if you feel that you want to take one or you want to create a new one, then you can do it under the customization setting. Any changes that we make in this setting here under Workspace, once we click OK, they become a default. Okay, so they're standard. If I go back to Tools and I go back to Options, and I go under Document, any changes here, we're gonna have to take the extra step and say we want to save those with the document. Again, you know, do you want to like again? You could have your default display. Do you want an enhanced view? Do you want it with overprints? Do you want enhanced view, normal view? Some people like to work in wireframe all the time. You can have that come up as a default if you want. Under the page, if you want a custom size to come up for the page, again, you would do it here. So if you want it to be, you know, 12 by 24 or, you know, 11 by 16 or whatever, then, you know, that information you can save right here. You know, do you want a different background? I don't really know if there's anything here that is worthwhile, but again, the size is something we change all the time. You know, the guidelines, again, the guidelines are nice from here because we can actually assign multiple guidelines from here if we want. So I can go through that a little later on. You know, grid setting, you know, the frequency, if you use the grid a lot, again, you can change the spacing and the frequency of how the grid is set up. The rulers, you know, do you want to, you know, these are your nudges with your arrow keys here. And again, you've got a super nudge, and then you've got a micro nudge, depending on whether you use the shift key or the control key. The other area that I'll change is I go into styles. As I mentioned, there's two types of text in Corel. There's artistic text and there's paragraph text. So most of the time, 99% of the time, we're working in artistic text. So if you select artistic text, you'll notice here that I have Times Roman. It's 0.33 inches tall. And it's a uniform fill. If I go into edit, I've also got it set for center justification. Okay, so every time I do text, it's always going to be center justified. I can't really think of most engraving trophy shops that shouldn't have this as a preset, because most of 99% of the time, I mean, we typically want to have some sort of a center justified text. I mean, occasionally you want to go left, but most of the time it's centered. So I'm gonna set it here. Again, you know, you can set whatever default font you want to come up. By default, X4 loads Arial, and if I remember correctly, I think it's 0.33 inches tall. So, you know, as far as your 24 points, whatever it is. So again, any of that can be changed here.
Is that in format text? Where did you go through to get that?
That's under styles.
Under text.
Yeah, under text, or yeah, under the underneath the document.
Sending them in the wrong.
You want to
to
go,
Workspace. So back up here.
just minimize that?
Yeah.
Yeah, select
Document.
document.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. And then
Double click that.
Yeah.
Styles, okay.
So under styles again, now by default X4, the other thing we're going to need to change, if we go to anytime we draw a rectangle or any shape, it's called the default graphic. The problem with the default graphic in X4 was the default hairline is 0.014. So anytime you drew something, Corel, the laser machine, thought it was a raster. So again, that was the first thing that we make everybody change now if they're going to X4 is because that's changed. So again, you select default graphic, you select, so you can see outline right now it says hairline, but if you come in here and you go to hairline, like right now it was basically 0.014 by default. Well, now you can just select hairline and then click OK. And
Sorry, where are you then?
I'm under styles, default graphic, and then at the bottom right hand corner it says outline and there's an
Default
edit
graphic,
button.
Gotcha.
So if you want it to be, if you want your cutout line to always be red, you could do it here too. You could just select your color in here and then make it red. So again, if you want a certain color to come up all the time, then that could be done that way. So. So once you're done any changes here, then you just select document and then we click save. Now it says save options as default for new documents. So anything that's checkmarked here, any changes I've made here, that will be saved. So again, be careful because if you've gone in and done a bunch of changes, you may not want to save them, right? So if I only make a change to the page, then you may want to check all the other ones and then just save the page.
Can't you save the shortcuts as like a separate?
The shortcuts are automatically saved. Once you do the shortcuts, they're automatically saved.
But could you actually save it as like a separate file?
The shortcuts?
Yeah.
No, not that I know of anyways. If you want to save the preferences, let's say for example that you have you want to open up a file and you want that file to come up and it's strictly for digitizing. So you want certain presets to come up for digitizing. Well, then you would save that as a template. Anytime you save a template in CorelDraw, it will actually it will bring up the preferences that you actually have saved with that file. When you open up a file in CorelDraw, it picks up any of the any of these preset preferences that are here. But if you want to create a separate file where it actually brings in certain settings, like maybe you want the guidelines to be here, maybe you want the dynamic guidelines to be turned on, maybe you want a certain snap spacing, whatever, or maybe you want to be in wireframe mode, then you can save that as a template file. So under when you go file save, then you would just say save.
And then you go file, new from template.
Yeah. Yeah, and the only difference is I wouldn't say saved options as defaults for new documents, right? I wouldn't check mark that. Again, if I click OK, like if I click OK right now, any of the changes I made are only good for this document, unless I go save, unless I say save for all new documents, right? So if I pick a certain setting, like say I want a red box to come up, then when I go save as, I can just say save as template, and that template becomes a CDT file, CorelDraw template. And basically what that will do is that will save any of the information that's in that preset that you've gone in under tools. So if you want certain things to come up with the document, like you might save a 5x7 plaque, it's not really a big deal, but if you went in here and under options, right, and you went under your guidelines, right, under presets, and then go user define. Let's say, for example, that you want a certain, let's say you want I guess I can mirror these. Let's say you want the top to be, 0.5, and the left to be 0.5, and it's going to mirror it so it's the same all the way around. that may be a 5x7 plaque that you set as a default. Again, you could save that as a template, so that always comes up as a template, but that's not really a big deal because you could save that as a file too. I mean, that's really. But if you wanted, the any box you drew in this file to have a red outline or a certain thickness of line, or you want the view to be wireframe, or you want the snap spacing to be a certain way or whatever, then you would save it as a template file, and it would bring in your settings from the template file. So, and again, if you do that, just don't say when you're under here. Don't say save options as default for new documents, because once you do that, any new document you open up will then pick up those settings. And again, the standard way to get out of that, if you do happen to do something silly, is hold the F5 key down when you start up Corel, and it will come up and ask you if you want to return to the original way that desktop was installed. So if you just, if you want to go back to the point where as if it was just reinstalled. Now the only issue is that if you've gone through a lot of work and changed a lot of things, then you may lose it. The other thing you can do under Tools is you can actually export a document too. Here where you can actually export a certain document so that or a certain workspace, just so that if you want to bring in if you created a workspace and spent a lot of time on doing it, then you can actually save it as a default, and then you can change your workspaces that way. So
Where was that?
that's under Options Workspace, right at the top. The default under Workspace, right at I've got Workspace selected. The default is the export default workspace. They have a Adobe Illustrator one here, so if you're used to working with Illustrator, it'll come up with the commands and everything for Illustrator. So, but again, if you want to generate your own things, you can. So your own shortcut keys and everything like that. You have a whole new workspace. One of the other things that I do too by default, if you go under Windows color palettes, the default color palette is usually CMYK. I usually change it to RGB. Okay, I mean there's really no reason to be working in CMYK. Again, sometimes it screws everybody up, and
What's
if
the
you're
difference? Yeah.
well, CMYK is for web, like printing magazines and brochures and things like that. If you're doing sublimation or you're doing lasering, you should always be working in RGB. So there's really no reason why you should have a default CYMK, because when you pick a solid black, it isn't a solid black. Okay, so.
I thought for sublimation, CMYK was better because the printer's CMYK.
No, the printer, the way the drivers typically work on inkjet printers is they need to see RGB values. So if you're working in CYMK, it converts it to RGB, and then the printer converts it back to CMYK. So it actually does double the work. As far as that's the way I've been told. Yeah. So any of the Epson printers, that's what they do. I mean, that's what I've been told as far as the way they run. So the question really is always working RGB. So unless you're working on a web press, unless somebody's, which you're not doing. So, I mean, you should always be working. So I just turn off the, I turn off the, yeah, exactly. I turn off the CY, like when I click CMYK, I get two here. So I usually don't even want to see that second one. So I usually just click it off and undo it. And again, this is the standard, I get the natural phone call. So I lost my colors on the side of the screen. What do I do now? So that's basically what you do. So, and again, if you really want to get sniffy, you can or swifty, you can actually go in and create your own palette. As far as your color goes and everything like that, if you want to create your own palette. But
sure,
I'm not about that right now. But
that's my other career.
Wouldn't you actually have to go to color management and change it to RGB too?
Well, usually under color management, I turn it right off. The color management, we usually come in here in the default settings and we turn the color management right off. That's under Tools, Color Management. And again here, I've got a default setting, I'm going to turn it off. And you can see the display. Oh, you can't see the display because I have the RGB palette. But if I had the CMY, again, you can see the colors change when you turn the color management on and off. So, and again, that should be off because if you have it on, it will actually be if you were sending over CMYK values, then your laser machine won't pick them up. Right? Like if you pick a black, like the issue, it's not so much of an issue for you, but it's an issue for Mary, that driver will only see RGB values. Right? So if you have a solid, so-called solid red on there that's CMYK, then the driver won't pick it up. It'll just pick up the default black. Because it needs to see just the solid zero, for black 000. Yep. Right? So that's part of
the computer in the laser room always gives you that funny blue out.
So again, usually you want to turn it off. And again, if you're sublimating, again, you don't want the color management on because we typically want the color management to be done by the profile that's within the printer as opposed to being in Corel. Okay, unless you're running the Artanium ink, and then again, you want the profile to be done in Corel. So, but usually, if you're running Sawgrass, right?
No, I got Rico now.
Yeah, but the Rico's still using.
Is it Sawgrass?
It's still using the Sawgrass ink with the power driver and everything in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, all the color correction is being done within the driver, so you need to turn the color management off in Corel. So there's really no reason to have the color management on unless you're running Artanium ink for sublimation that I can think of for us. So Artanium was if you bought the cheaper Rico, they only give you a profile. They don't give you the power driver. So the profile then to correct the colors needs to be loaded into Corel. So because again, you don't want to do color correction in Corel and then send it to the printer, and then the printer does color correction because all of a sudden now you're doing 2 color corrections and and then you're going to change your colors even worse. So yes.
Burgundy. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, man.
Yes. So basically, that's really basically all I do as far as my settings go. Again, you could do the settings from here. I never use this save settings as default, but I usually do it in the options menu just because the worst thing about that, you may make 5 or 6 setting changes in your job, and then go in to start changing your options, and then all of a sudden you overwrite a lot of other things and you don't realize you've changed. So again, you've got to be a little careful.